What if Batman became the villain? In this dark, alternative ending story of The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne loses his sanity after Rachel's death and turns Gotham into a city ruled by fear. Witness the fall of a hero, the rise of a tyrant, and the rebirth of Gotham. A cinematic, emotional, and epic what-if, exploring justice, madness, and redemption in the Batman universe. Now take a deep breath and let's go. In the heart of Gotham City, the rain never truly stops. It falls endlessly over streets soaked in sin, washing away the blood but never the guilt. This is a city of ghosts, haunted by its heroes, poisoned by its villains, and trapped in a cycle where justice is only a dream. Once, Gotham believed in salvation. It believed in a man who wore the knight-like armor, who became fear itself to fight against the darkness that consumed it. He was not born a hero. He was forged from tragedy, a child who lost everything and built a symbol to fill the void. Bruce Wayne, the Batman. For years, he was the line that stood between order and chaos. He faced monsters who wore painted smiles, men who burned the world to prove a point, and corrupt souls who thrived in the shadows. And yet, he stood firm. He believed that through pain, through sacrifice, Gotham could be redeemed. But all light, even the smallest flame, casts a shadow, and sometimes that shadow becomes the truth. It began with loss. Rachel Dawes, the woman who reminded Bruce of who he truly was, the only person who saw the man beneath the mask and loved him for it. Her death was not just a tragedy, it was the death of his humanity. When she was taken from him in a flash of fire and chaos, something inside Bruce cracked, something that could never be mended. He had faced fear before. He had faced madness, death, betrayal. But this was emptiness, a hollow echo that whispered to him in the quiet hours of the night. And in that silence, he began to question everything. Was Gotham truly worth saving? Had his crusade against crime done anything but feed the very chaos he tried to stop? Every villain, every innocent death, every soul lost in the war between order and anarchy, all of it traced back to him. The Batman, the man who made himself a weapon and became the reason the war never ended. And so, the seed of corruption was planted not in Gotham's underworld, but in its savior. Days turned to weeks. The city began to rebuild after the fall of Harvey Dent, its White Knight now a martyr of hope. Commissioner Gordon told the people that the Batman was gone, that he had vanished into the night to atone for his sins. But the truth was far darker. Bruce Wayne did not disappear. He hid. Buried in the ruins of his mansion, surrounded by dust and silence, he stared into the abyss he had created. The Batcave, once a sanctuary of purpose, became a tomb of obsession. Screens flickered endlessly with images of crime, corruption, and suffering. The mission had not ended. It had evolved into something darker. Each night, Bruce watched Gotham and saw the same faces, the same violence, the same decay. He told himself that justice had failed because it was too merciful. He told himself that to truly save Gotham he could not protect it. He had to control it. And with each passing night, that idea stopped being madness. It became logic. It became destiny. Soon, whispers began to spread through the city. Criminals vanishing without a trace. Corrupt politicians found dead in alleys, their bodies marked with the symbol of the bat. Not painted with care, but carved deep into their flesh. A message, a warning. Gotham's underworld trembled. The people spoke of the Batman's return. But this was not the Guardian they remembered. This was something else, something colder, sharper, ruthless. The myth of the Dark Knight had become real, a force without mercy, without limits, without humanity. As weeks passed, Gotham's fear returned, but it was not the fear of criminals anymore. It was the fear of the people. Citizens began to vanish. Surveillance cameras turned inward. No one felt safe, not even the innocent. And far beneath the city, the man behind it all watched in silence. His eyes, once filled with purpose, now burned with obsession. In the dark glow of the Batcave, Bruce Wayne had become a god in his own mind, a god of judgment, convinced that only through domination could he cleanse the filth of Gotham. The moral line that once separated the hero from the villain had vanished completely. He no longer sought to inspire fear in criminals. He was fear itself, a spirit of vengeance twisted beyond recognition. In this new reality, Gotham's protector was no longer its savior. He was its reckoning. And so began a new age for the city, an age where the symbol that once gave hope became a nightmare that ruled from the shadows. The bat signal still burned in the stormy sky, but now it was no longer a call for help. It was a warning that the dark night had fallen, and that Gotham's greatest hero had become its greatest threat. This is the story of how Bruce Wayne, broken by grief, betrayed by fate, and consumed by his own creation, became the very evil he once swore to destroy. The storm never left Gotham. It became a permanent part of the skyline, a reminder of the chaos that once was and the order that replaced it. But this new order did not come from politicians, nor from the law. It came from the shadows, from the man who once vowed to protect it. Under the city's blackened sky, a silent regime began to form. Criminals disappeared, yes, but so did freedom. The Batman had become more than a myth. He had become a system, an unseen ruler, enforcing peace through absolute fear. Every street corner, every rooftop, every whisper in an alley was under his eye. The Batcave expanded, no longer a refuge, but a command center. Drones circled the skies. Surveillance networks spanned across the city, mapping every heartbeat, tracking every word. No one saw the man behind it all, but everyone felt his presence. At first, the results seemed miraculous. Crime rates dropped to levels Gotham had never imagined possible. Gangs dissolved, drug trade vanished. Corrupt officials resigned overnight, their darkest secrets mysteriously exposed. The city began to run with machine-like precision, but perfection always comes with a cost. The people lived in silence, too afraid to speak against the invisible hand that guided their every move. Curfews were set, though no one announced them. The bat signal no longer called for hope. It was a symbol of surveillance, projected nightly as a warning: Gotham is watched. The few who dared to resist disappeared without a trace. Some whispered that they were taken beneath the city to a network of tunnels and cells built under the ruins of Wayne Tower. Others said they were judged by the Bat himself, their crimes measured by his unrelenting sense of justice, and their punishments final. The line between law and tyranny had been erased, and at the heart of it all sat Bruce Wayne. No longer a man, but a phantom of purpose. He rarely spoke, he ate little, he slept even less. The glow of his monitors painted his face in a cold blue light, reflecting the empty gaze of a god who no longer recognized his own creation. He told himself it was for Rachel, that she had believed in a better Gotham, that this was her dream, realized, purified, cleansed, and finally safe. But deep down, he knew the truth. Rachel's Gotham had been one of compassion. His Gotham was one of control. He had become what he feared most, not a man corrupted by power, but by righteousness. Because in his mind, he was not wrong. He was necessary. And so, he ruled. The Batman who once fought the shadows had become the shadow itself. Yet even under this iron grip, resistance began to stir. Small groups of citizens, former cops and vigilantes emerged, remnants of Gordon's old task force, the last believers in what Gotham once stood for. They called themselves the Gilded Dawn. They operated in the underground, spreading forbidden messages across the darkened alleys. The night has fallen, the city must rise. They were few, scattered, hunted like prey. But their rebellion planted a spark Bruce could not extinguish. He watched their every move through his vast network of surveillance, always one step ahead. But something about them disturbed him. Among their ranks were faces he knew, officers he once trusted, people he once saved, allies he once fought beside. They had turned against him. And as he watched their secret meetings unfold, hidden beneath Gotham's decaying tunnels, Bruce felt something he had long forgotten: doubt. For the first time in years, the silence of the Batcave was broken by the sound of his own voice. Not in rage, but in reflection. Had he gone too far? Had the mission, his sacred mission, become the very evil he once swore to destroy? But the thought didn't last, because almost immediately another voice drowned it out, the one that had haunted him since the night Rachel died. The whisper of the Joker. Not in words, but in memory. The echo of laughter that lived inside his mind, mocking him endlessly. The Joker had said it once, and Bruce could still hear it. "You and I are destined to do this forever." And in a way, he was right. The Joker had won, not through chaos, but through legacy. He had proven that Gotham could only be saved through madness. And Bruce had become his final joke. From that night on, Bruce no longer questioned his actions. He silenced every voice of doubt, buried every trace of regret. He convinced himself that the rebellion, the Gilded Dawn, was proof that Gotham still needed him, proof that chaos still lurked, waiting for its chance to return. And if Gotham refused to accept peace, then it would have to be forced into it. The crackdown began without warning. Entire neighborhoods were locked down. Cameras were installed in every home. The air grew heavy with paranoia. People whispered in fear of their own reflections, wondering if the Bat was watching through the darkness. And he was. The Gilded Dawn fell one by one. Their hideouts raided, their leaders executed in silence, their symbol, a golden sun painted over the Bat, erased from every wall. Bruce called it purification, but to Gotham, it was conquest. In the years that followed, the city became unrecognizable, clean, controlled, silent. The skyline glittered with order, but the soul of Gotham was gone. And so, the myth of the Dark Knight transformed into a legend of fear, a cautionary tale whispered from one generation to the next. They said the Batman no longer fought for justice. They said he fought only for himself. And that, somewhere beneath the city, he still watched, immortal, unyielding, waiting for the world to sin again. But legends, no matter how powerful, are never eternal. For even in the darkest night, rebellion finds a way to rise. And as Gotham slept beneath its false perfection, a storm began to brew once more. A storm that would challenge the God of Shadows and remind him of what he once was. Time passed, but Gotham no longer kept track of days. There were no seasons anymore, only the cold hum of control. The city had become a machine, perfect in its silence, flawless in its fear. Every sound was monitored, every movement recorded, every heartbeat measured. The streets were clean. The crime was gone. But so was life. What was once a metropolis of chaos had become a monument to order, a lifeless perfection built on fear. And beneath this still surface, a resistance continued to breathe, waiting, hiding, watching. The Gilded Dawn was thought to be destroyed, but like all fires, it had only been smothered, not extinguished. Its embers glowed beneath the ruins, carried by those who still remembered the Gotham that once was. A Gotham where people had a voice. A Gotham where justice was not vengeance wearing a mask. They moved in silence, using the very tunnels the Batman had built to fight crime, twisting his own weapons against him. They had no leader at first, only a message. The night has fallen, but the dawn is coming. The people began to whisper again, a dangerous thing in a city of surveillance, and soon those whispers became movement. Small at first, graffiti painted in the shadows, coded signals hidden in radio static, faint glimmers of gold across the grey walls of Gotham's streets. The rebellion was alive, but Bruce Wayne saw everything. He always did. From the depths of the Batcave, surrounded by monitors that blinked like 1,000 unblinking eyes, he watched the rebellion grow, slowly, methodically, infecting his perfect city like a virus. He did not panic. He planned. Because for him, this was not resistance. It was proof. Proof that Gotham could never be cured. Proof that no matter how much he sacrificed, the city would always crave chaos. And so he prepared to do the unthinkable. He began Project Nightfall, an operation that would end Gotham's rebellion once and for all. Not through intimidation, but through annihilation. In the dark belly of Wayne Industries' forgotten wings, Bruce reactivated old prototypes. Surveillance drones armed with non-lethal sonic pulses, soon modified for something far more deadly. He built them without rest, guided by a logic stripped of compassion. To him, this was mercy. He would not kill Gotham's people directly. He would simply reshape them, burn away their will to fight until silence was all that remained. But while Bruce prepared his purge, Gotham itself began to awaken. Hidden transmissions spread through the underground, messages of hope in the voice of someone long thought gone, a voice calm, firm, and familiar, the voice of Commissioner James Gordon. He had vanished years earlier, presumed dead after the first crackdown, but in truth he had survived, wounded, broken, and waiting for the right moment to strike back. Now, with the Gilded Dawn reborn, Gordon became their unseen leader, the conscience of a city that refused to die. He spoke not of victory, but of remembrance. He reminded the people of who Batman once was, of why he had fought, of what he had lost. And slowly the people began to believe again, not in fear but in courage. The rebellion grew stronger. They learned how to blind the Bat's cameras, how to jam his drones, how to hide from the all-seeing eye. And for the first time in years, Gotham's skyline began to change. Golden suns painted over the symbol of the Bat. A new light rising against the darkness. But with every act of defiance, Bruce's fury deepened. He began to lose himself completely, consumed by paranoia and the haunting echo of Rachel's voice in his mind. At times he would speak to her, as if she was still there, sitting beside him in the cave, whispering that this was not what she wanted. And yet her image had become a weapon. In his own delusion, he convinced himself that she would have understood, that she would have wanted Gotham safe, no matter the cost. But even as he clung to that illusion, cracks began to form within him. He stopped removing the cowl. He stopped answering to the name Bruce Wayne. To the city and to himself, he was the Batman, nothing more. A symbol made flesh, now devouring the man who created it. His reflection no longer recognized him. The eyes behind the mask were hollow, burning with the exhaustion of a god who could not rest. And then, one night, the silence of Gotham broke. A massive explosion ripped through the heart of the city. A communications tower, one of Bruce's primary surveillance hubs, destroyed. The rebellion had struck, and in that instant, the illusion of control shattered. Gotham descended into chaos once more, but this time it was not the chaos of criminals. It was the chaos of freedom. People poured into the streets, tearing down the symbols of fear that had ruled their lives. The bat signal was ripped from the sky, its shattered remains dragged through the streets as a symbol of defiance. Bruce watched from the shadows, his city burning not with crime, but with rebellion. He had seen this before. The madness, the fire, the screaming. It was the same night Rachel died. It was the same nightmare, repeating endlessly. And so he convinced himself there was only one way to end it. Project Nightfall was activated, hundreds of drones lifted into the air, their engines roaring like thunder as they spread across Gotham. Sonic pulses ignited the night, crashing through the air like invisible storms. Buildings trembled, windows shattered, voices fell silent. The rebellion fought back, but they were no match for the precision of the Bat. Gotham became a war zone, the streets lit by fire and lightning, the sky alive with metallic wings. And at the center of it all stood Batman, the shadow he had become, unstoppable, unrelenting, a god waging war on his own creation. Yet as the chaos unfolded, a voice cut through the static. A voice broadcasted across the city, one that froze Bruce in place. It was Gordon, calm, steady, unbroken, and his words echoed like a knife to Bruce's heart. He said, "You were never the darkness, Bruce. You were the spark that kept it away. But now, you are the very thing you swore to fight." And in that moment, the city stopped. For the first time, even the drones hesitated, their signals disrupted by the rebellion's final act of defiance. Project Nightfall began to crumble. The system that Bruce built to control everything started to fail. And beneath the collapsing weight of his empire, surrounded by flames and sirens, and the sound of his city tearing itself apart, Bruce Wayne, the man who became a myth, finally faced the truth. He had not saved Gotham, he had destroyed it. The sky above Gotham burned. Smoke and lightning swallowed the skyline, painting the city in the glow of fire and ash. Project Nightfall had failed. The drones that once obeyed the Dark Knight now fell from the heavens, crashing into the streets they were meant to protect. The storm had come full circle, and in the chaos of his own creation's collapse, Bruce Wayne, the shadow of a man who once fought for justice, wandered through the ruins of his empire. He moved like a ghost through the debris of the Batcave, the monitors shattered, the hum of machinery silenced. The walls that once echoed with the heartbeat of purpose now stood cold and lifeless. Only the sound of dripping water remained, slow, rhythmic, relentless, like the ticking of a clock counting down to the end. For the first time in years, he removed the cowl. The mask that had once given him power now felt like a chain around his neck. He looked at it, scarred, broken, smeared with soot and blood, and saw himself reflected in its hollow eyes. There was no hero left behind that mask, only a man who had lost everything he once stood for. The rebellion had survived the night. Gordon's message had spread across every channel, every hidden frequency. Gotham had awakened, not in chaos, but in defiance. Citizens poured into the streets, helping one another, rebuilding what was left. For the first time in decades, Gotham stood without a savior, and somehow it stood taller for it. But for Bruce, there was no redemption. The empire he built was gone, and with it, the illusion that had kept him alive. All that remained was the truth, that he had become the very monster he'd sworn to destroy. He wandered through the remnants of the cave, his steps echoing in the dark. He saw the symbols of his past scattered across the floor, the shattered batsuit, the burned photo of Rachel, the rusted remains of his father's gun, each relic a reminder of a life defined by pain. And then he found it. An old journal covered in dust. Alfred's handwriting on the cover. He opened it, and inside were words written years ago during the early days of the mission. "You wanted to be more than a man, Master Wayne, but perhaps the greatest thing a man can be is simply good." The sentence lingered in the air, soft yet crushing. For the first time in years, Bruce felt something that had long been buried beneath the armor: sorrow. Not for Rachel, not for Gotham, but for himself. Because he finally understood that the mask had never been his salvation. It had been his prison. Above ground, the rebellion reached the gates of Wayne Manor. Gordon led them through the fog, determined to confront the man who once stood for everything they believed in. But when they entered the ruins, they found only silence. No guards, no traps, only the echo of footsteps long gone. Deep beneath the manor, in the final chamber of the Batcave, Bruce Wayne stood before the waterfall, the same one that had once hidden his secret. He looked into the endless darkness beyond it, the cold air whipping against his face, and in that moment he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. He spoke softly, though no one could hear him. A whisper to the ghost of the woman he had lost. A whisper to the man he used to be. He said goodbye. Then he stepped forward into the rushing water and vanished. The cave went silent. And for the first time in Gotham's history, the Bat was gone. Not defeated, but released. Days passed. Weeks. The rebellion transformed into governance. Gotham began to rebuild not as a city of fear, but of accountability. The symbol of the Bat was erased from its walls, replaced by the rising sun of the Gilded Dawn. But even as the people celebrated their freedom, there was no hatred for the man who had once ruled them, only mourning. Because despite everything, Bruce Wayne had still saved Gotham, not through order, not through control, but through his own downfall. His story became a warning, a reminder of how easily heroes become monsters when they believe only they can decide what is right. Years later, Gotham changed. The streets filled with color again. Children laughed where sirens once screamed. The skyline glowed, not with the cold light of surveillance, but with the warmth of life. Yet even in this new age, there remained whispers, stories told in quiet corners about the man who became the night. They said he still watched, somewhere beneath the city, guarding it from a distance. Others said he had truly died that night beneath the waterfall, his body carried away into the dark. But no one could ever prove it. And perhaps that was how it was meant to be, because Bruce Wayne had never been about flesh and blood. He had been an idea, one that changed, twisted, fell, and finally was reborn. In the museum that stood where Wayne Tower once rose, there was a single artifact encased in glass, the broken bat mask. Beneath it, a plaque with only 3 words, "Even gods fall." Visitors would stop and stare, feeling both fear and reverence. Some saw the mask as a symbol of tyranny. Others saw it as the ultimate sacrifice, the moment when a man gave everything to show the world the danger of absolute control. And in the end, that was Bruce Wayne's true legacy. Not the empire he built, not the fear he inspired, but the truth his fall revealed. That heroes are not born from power, they are born from humility. And when they forget that, they become the very evil they swore to fight. As the years turned to decades, Gotham's skyline changed again. The city thrived. But on stormy nights, when thunder rolled through the clouds and lightning illuminated the rooftops, some swore they saw a shadow move among the gargoyles, silent, watchful, eternal. Not a man, not a god, but a warning. The story of the Dark Knight had ended, but his echo, his legend, would never fade. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel for more alternative endings like this. See you on next video.